Well, welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Founders Pass. Today we have Louis from Xborg. Handing it over to you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, cool. And thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to discuss about my journey and what we do at Xborg. Just a couple of words about myself. I'm the founder of Xborg. Before that, I was big into traditional finance. I was a quant and working in crypto at a couple of large banks. But I've always been a passionate gamer, although that's never been a profession or a job itself. And yeah, we're pretty much giving tools to empower gamers and building those tools to introduce Web3 and the aspects of ownership to gamers, which I feel is very important today. And yeah, we started back in 2022, so early last year, and since then we've done quite a bit and building a couple of apps for the space.
Amazing. I think that's some great experience. Obviously, come from a very financial background, but it's great to hear your passion on gaming. I guess we can jump right into it then. I guess with Xborg, how did you find your founder product market fit?
Yeah, so well, first this is understanding that building crypto is very different. It's very different from Web2, as in, what this implies is that you need to be in a mindset where things can change very rapidly. So you need to be very agile, and you need to be also very community focused. As soon as there is a token or an NFT, then the perspective of building is very different. So I would say like a thick skin is very important. Being able to handle feedback and community feedback, being very agile. Um, I think the other is having a base knowledge of Web3. Um, as in, we see lots of NFT projects or token launches going very bad because the founders don't have an understanding of the meta or how things work. And I think that's definitely was the case with me. I was involved in quite a few DAOs before, and I was very involved in crypto since 2017. And I would say just lastly, just a uh, passion for two things. I think one for the crypto space and blockchain, and what we can do and what we can build for the space. I think if you're just incentivized by money and you see token prices go up, especially today in bear markets, it's not something that can drive you. And so just being driven by the core ethos of blockchain and crypto to empower people and to build novel technologies to free people out of financial systems or out of centralization is very important. And then in whatever you do, and in my case in gaming, you need to have this passion for the space and the industry. So I would say these are the components that lead me to believe that I would be a great fit for building Expo today.
So I guess moving on to the second question, with how quickly the everything develops within the space, is there ever a worry that as Web3 advances, the product you develop will be outdated? And I guess how do you battle this?
Yeah, so it's that mindset of acknowledging that whatever you've built in the past sometimes has to be rethought. And for example, in our case at Xborg, the user experience initially did not involve icon abstractions, and of course with this new EIP, then you see new use cases. And so this, for example, like the way you create your wallet has to be rethought. um, Now we have a new EIP like the 6551, where you like an NFT can own other NFTs. And initially, when we did our architecture to build the identity of players, we did not factor this in, and now we implement this. So um, because we build in the open, and Ethereum and most blockchain techs would just build in the open. We just have to be a very just open to the idea of changing things and improving. I think it's common knowledge that like the base layers or the infrastructures still have a lot of ways to go. It's not there yet. So like whatever you build will change. I think as long as you stick to the overall problems that you're trying to solve and the solutions that you bring to this, um, in theory, all of the things that would come forward will only better your product. And so I think you need to be agile. It's very easy to be irrelevant in the space if you don't follow the new trends.
I think that's a great point. I think there's definitely you have to keep up to date with the space, and I think if you don't adapt to it, and don't stay agile, then you can easily be left behind. Especially being so early, building a product is somewhat an ever changing and ever developing cycle within the space. So you've definitely got to take that into consideration. And I guess off the back of that,
Yep.
moving on to the third question, more on the tokenomic side of things. Obviously, you come from a financial background. When you're looking to evaluate the tokenomic structure of a project or game, I guess what do you look for good tokenomic structure?
Um, yeah, so it's definitely I would say a very tough one to unpack, especially if you want to go in depth. Um, I think first is before looking at tokenomics from like purely a distribution or like emission, and a lot of the economics revolving around a token is first why you have a token in the first place, and 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 this that really needs to be answered, because you see a lot of projects just using a token, but if the project could work without a token, then what's the reason for having a token at all? Uh, Governance is not really the answer, like because you could have a soul-bound tokens and without liquidity. So I think the first answer to have is the reasons why you're launching a token in the first place. And then just the basic of economics is supply and demand. So when we look at emissions of tokens, um, then something we don't see today is unlocks as per specific milestones, and that's something we're trying to implement. So what that means is today we're looking at just time as the proxy to unlocking tokens. But I think what makes the most sense is just having milestones per projects. So in our case, is to say, okay, the day you have 1 million users and de facto a lot of people use the token in the app, you unlock X amount of token. So that ensures that your supply and demand is not too flawed. Um, because of course, if release tons of supply over time, but the demand does not increase, then well, the tokenomics don't quite make sense. So I would say this is very important, and that's something we don't see. Is just yeah, thinking that time can be the only proxy to unlocking tokens. I think it's good that time passes, but it does not mean that any meaningful things are happening in the project. So if you have like an unlock schedule of like 5 years, 6 years, and you haven't done anything for the space, I don't think you should unlock tokens. So I think that's one of the things we're trying to do. Then, of course, there are things that are a bit controversial. So I would say this is a unpopular opinion, but I think buybacks and burn don't quite make sense, especially in an era where blockchain projects haven't found product market fits that much, and that means because you haven't found product market fits, cash is one of your main assets to continue building. And when you're just burning your cash to buy back your own token and to burn it, it's like giving dividends as a startup. It does not quite make sense initially, and then as you mature, it would make sense. But what we see in the equity market is people don't do this. Like even the biggest ones, like Meta or Apple. Well, Apple actually is giving dividends, but the other startups they don't. So there is no reason for us to do this. So I would say, yeah, these are some key takeaways. Um, of course, we could talk a bit more about the distribution, as in how you allocate your distribution, and again, I think that should be milestone based. For example, when you build a project, typically you have a percentage that goes to a team, but I don't think it makes sense to specifically as a team should only be rewarded if the project works out. And so again, like for example myself, like I can just be working at Xborg for like the next 5 years, but if I don't like if I'm not good enough, I don't think I deserve any tokens at all. And so just swapping the time for milestones or achievements, I think is very strong. It's a very strong proposition for crypto projects. And yeah, overall, I think it's just a game of supply and demand. So like there are things that are very unhealthy, like staking yields, uh, like trying to bootstrap your user base with high staking or airdrops. Which I think we can all acknowledge that this is unhealthy for the space, or this is just a game of trying to pump your metrics to raise additional capital, and that is quite, I think, flawed or very short-sighted. So I think if staking is in your distribution, pie of token, but this is not fueled by like actual revenues or profits out of your activities, then it's not quite sustainable. Like it's just doomed to be reduced to zero. Um, so I think lastly, I would just say, it's good to just put tokens where they need to be, as in you need to like I see projects like not allocating tokens to a team or not allocating projects tokens to development. At the end of the day, your token is a way to involve your community, but also like in the early days of crypto to help you bootstrap as much as possible. Um, so yeah, that's I would say that's the answer.
Great. I think there's some amazing points in there, but especially on the milestone tokenomic side of things and the payout. I think that definitely keeps teams a lot more accountable. I think it's definitely something we see as an issue in the space is they're all in it for kind of just that unlock and to make their own bit of money, but they don't meet the stuff that they promise to consumers. So I think it's a great way to keep those teams accountable and kind of move this space forward in terms of making sure that good products are built and good teams into the space.
Yeah, it's of course challenging, because the reality of projects is must will fail. So like, and the reality of the space today is most founders are not. I would say they're not there for the right reasons. As in, most of them that I've met, money components is very important, and so they're very keen to launch a token because they know they will get a big chunk of supply, and so they will be able to profit off of this, regardless of whatever they achieve. And so um, and people have this mindset of like, okay, if it's a bull run, things go up in price, and whatever CD projects would almost hit 1 billion market cap, and I don't think this is the way forward, and that's something we will implement actually, where this is controlled by the DAO. So this, I think, is going to be a hot topic, to be honest, because it's also like the team tokens is one way in which you incentivize like employees and not just founders. So how do you justify to employees directly, hey, this is just conditional on votes of the DAO? Like there is not a lot of I would say security or certainty, and that does not quite work with certain profiles.
That's great. Moving on to the fourth question. It's more around just onboarding large Web2 entities. Obviously, you guys at Xborg have worked with some of the largest esports brands, kind of onboarding them. I guess, were there any challenges when looking to onboard them into your ecosystem with Web3 and everything like that? We obviously see a lot of brands be skeptic when it comes to this sort of things and who they partner with. So I guess, how did you overcome those obstacles, and how did you onboard them into your ecosystem?
Yeah. It's of course, I think us we're in a very good position because like like we got incubated by Swissborg, and we have very strong ties to Swissborg. Swissborg is a large crypto actor in Europe, very well regulated. Almost 1 million users, almost like 1 billion in assets in management. So it's a big actor, and they've been around for like 6 years now. So it's I would say a show of confidence to have Swissborg, and we were the first project of its kind actually going to the space. Um, so here, why I'm mentioning this is like usually when a startup approaches an esports team or a large organization like top 10 esports teams in the world, they're being very suspicious of like, do you actually have the finances to do whatever you pitch me? Do you have the correct intentions? And we were just lucky to tick the boxes and to have them trust us, like at first principles, and that was super important initially. So that's how we got our first team to be on board, and then I think it's coming into a mindset where you're like, okay, the only thing we want to do is to actually add value to the fans of your team, and that's all it matters to us. And so when building the Xborg GG and the different interfaces for the esports teams, it's always been how do you just add the most value to you guys? And that means we also had to make sacrifices and say, okay, if you want only a Web2 interface and add Web3 tech later, that's also just fine. Because we saw a lot of esports teams. I would say from the ones we've onboarded, half want to go Web3 native, the other half want to go Web2, but they are keen to go Web3 later on. But what we tell them is, look, we're here to add value to you guys. We're not going to force anything on your side. These are the benefits of Web3, but at the end of the day, what the esports seems like is to say, okay, we start Web2, and then we can incrementally add Web3 components. And what we also pitch is the fact that you can involve your community from Web2 and to say, hey, just let's run a vote as to whether you want to go Web3. Um, I think that's been the consensus, and I think if you just start approaching them with really the mindset of adding value to them, there is no real blockers. Uh, Plus, you're legitimate, as in we know what we're talking about, and that's a strong asset for us. Like we have like the correct backing, we have the correct financials, um, and we have people in our team that actually are only gamers or esports fans. They're not really into Web3. Whereas myself, I'm like full on Web3. But I also understand, adding NFTs to just add NFTs makes no sense. Like you need to have a genuine reason to have a like ownership within your app, and sometimes like NFTs don't add value. I would say most often they don't add value. So yeah.
I think it's a great point, and it's nice to see those brands starting to trust organizations like Xborg. I think it's interesting to hear that you're going for that Web 2 and Web 3 point of view to have both sides of things. You can kind of onboard some into the Web 2 ecosystem, and then down the line go into the Web 3. I think it's a great way to introduce them to the technology and kind of introduce them to the benefits of it. So it's really nice to see that approach. Moving on to the final question around DAOs. With the recent events with Bombridge DAO, I guess how do you see this affecting DAOs within the industry and the future of how DAOs are going to be constructed and kind of where they're going to be operating?
Yeah, so I think it's a very tough one because well, legislation and regulations is of course very important. Now, if you want to do things in a very regulated way, it's going to cost you a lot. Like Balbridge, for example, like it's I think when you're into DeFi, getting the correct regulatory framework is very costly, specifically in the US, where the hourly rates of a good lawyer in Web3 and crypto is very high. So to get started is pretty tough. What we see here though is Boundbridge being a very small DeFi platform. I think with like 2 million TVL at some points, which is very small compared to other DeFi protocols, as you can be held accountable, um, you know, like independent of the size of your projects, and that of course means that you need to be cautious in every step of the way. Regarding DAOs being held accountable, I think at the end of the day, someone has to be accountable, even if it's a DAO. So we've seen like well, it's different to some degree, but Tornado Cash devs being held accountable for writing like Tornado Cash code base, and it's I think the like legislations will still try and enforce responsibility to project founders and project owners. So yeah, that's the consensus. Now, regulation is very important. It's just what we see between Coinbase and the SEC and just all the US entities is for now. Just I would say the best practice is try to not mess up with US that much. That's something we do like on our launchpad, for example. We don't allow US citizens to participate just because we don't want to be in trouble, and that's the same mentality for Swissborg. um, so it's also not helping to say we we don't include a certain demographic, but that's been our trade-off, because there's still no clear framework to specifically in the US to approach this. I think we will major, but it's of course a very sad event for builders in the space. Of course, we don't know the extent of the investigation. Is it just at protocol level, or like I actually don't know in depth what happened, aside from just an investigation. Did you have a commingling of funds or that type of stuff? This I honestly don't know, but I would just say, yeah, everyone is accountable to some degree. DAO contributors are accountable. I think it's a bit too laissez-faire to say, okay, we're a DAO, so a DAO is not responsible. It doesn't quite work that way. Um, and yeah, I mean, the SEC will come at you if you're not following a proper framework and targeting US citizens.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a sad thing to see with having to exclude U.S. citizens. It's going to be interesting to see how some of the bigger crypto companies and the tech companies decide whether they operate within the U.S. given its regulation, or whether they choose elsewhere. But I guess the key from all of that was very much the accountability. I think it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out within the DAO space, as a lot of people do tend to neglect that there has to be someone accountable. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out,
Yep.
irrespective. Cool. Moving on to the fun questions now. Starting with what was your favorite esports moment of all time?
Yeah, so I'm a big Call of Duty fan. I mean, I used to at least. That's definitely been the game I've played the most, and so I think I've always remembered the grand finals of the 2013 championship, where you basically had it was the old complexity team. I think that was known as Farico. So Farico was just before complexity, and that was with Envious. And you basically is was the grand final, so the very last round, and that was I mean that came down to 1v1 in the search and destroy modes, and you basically had Karma from Envy and Parasite, and I mean, it was a very tense moment because that was the final rounds and 1v1 search and destroy. So, um, I mean, I'm not going to go into too much details, but yeah, Faiko was trying to defuse the bomb, but then at the last second, really, Parasite won, and yeah, that gave the victory to Complexity. So Faiko at the time, and so yeah, that was I think one of the I think it's one of those moments where I was just very hooked to the game. I was, yeah, feeling a lot of emotions at this time.
Yeah, I think I've definitely over the most recent years experienced the excitement that Call of Duty, competitive Call of Duty, can create. Big fan of the esports side of things on that side, and definitely can see the why it's growing so much with the kind of emotions it can excite. It really is an exciting space as of right now, and I think it's only going to keep growing. Cool. On to the second fun question. Very much on a similar topic. It's very much who's your favorite esports player of all time? Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, past is Optic Scamp. I mean, retired, and that's just in line with Call of Duty, and I would say otherwise, a couple of team members at Xborg are a fan of Faker. Uh, hence did we partner with T1? Can't disclose too much here, but yeah, like sometimes we play like some League of Legends with the team, and I think like as favorite mid laner on League of Legends, that would definitely be Faker. I think everyone knows Faker in the League of Legends scene, and yeah, but before that was definitely Scump. Um, it's yeah, it was pretty much whoever I inspired to become like gameplay wise in Call of Duty, and um, that brings back a lot of good memories from the game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Scump and Nix. I mean, it's sad to see him retire. I think the esports gonna miss him a lot. But yeah, thank you very much for coming on the show. That is it. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm sure there's a lot of insights that can be taken here for other founders and other builders within the space. So yeah, appreciate your time.